The elimination of the 5 hindrances by Venerable Rungruan Papa Saro, Dr. Rungruan Lim Chu Patipa. Principle: after performing the mindfulness meditation, the mindfulness will be stronger and be able to detect the arising phenomenon during the courses of thought. This development is very significant because the mind will be able to detect the varieties of defilements that arise during the volitional formations in the mind processing. Typically, these kinds of defilements are called middle defilements. In another word, we may feel that there are a lot of troubling thoughts inside the mind, and unfortunately most of these thoughts lead to unwholesome state of mind. Therefore, during the practice, we may feel that these thoughts will disturb the steadiness of the mind. In Buddhism, these kinds of thoughts arising inside the mind are technically called the middle defilements of 5 hindrances, lower fetters, namely desire for sensual pleasure, ill will, torpor or depression, restlessness or anxiety. And in this part of the practice, we will learn on how to apply several proper corrective actions to abandon the arising unwholesome thoughts within the mind, and the mind will learn on how to internally cope with any arising problem within the mind rightly, so that the hindrance will not be aggravated into more serious problem of rough defilement. The mind is a complex system of several parallel processing within central nervous system. Each unwholesome thought will start with a minor error first, then increasingly aggravated within the mind processing, and then turning to be a complicated troubling thought of rough defilement with greed, hatred, and delusion before bursting out into action. In the Buddhist practice, when performing a mindfulness meditation, we can realize that beneath what appearing to be a calmness after abandoning unwholesome phenomena of rough defilements, there are plenty of developing middle defilements in along with the course of mind processing. Therefore, it is necessity to cleanse all the 5 hindrances of the middle defilements from the mind before dwelling into the inner mind. In the early path of the Buddha enlightenment, the Buddha also had to abandon all the 5 hindrances first before dwelling into the inner mind as follows.
Abandoning longing for the world, ill will, hatred, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, doubt, respectively, I dwell with mind free from all these 5 hindrances, the 5 lower fetters.
Conceptually, the abandoning of these hindrances can be achieved through 2 combined activities. Firstly, by having mindfulness to detect the arising hindrance, and secondly then having the knowledge to employ a specific opposite perception to offset the arising hindrance. Theoretically, it is clear that in any moment of consciousness, if we have mindfulness being aware of what is going on, and with wisdom to determine it correctly, then we will be able to internally avoid any wrongdoing in life by having a wisdom on right view with proper perception or on a right thought, with intention, on wholesome matter or the truths of nature. The Buddha called this kind of practicing technique the 10 perceptions and contemplations, the Dharma with mindfulness, as a liberated thinking to cope with the arising sensual pleasure as follows.
The Buddha suggested the following 10 perceptions, including, having a perception on impermanency, having a perception on no self or impersonality, having a perception on loathsomeness, having a perception on the disadvantage of the body, having a perception on abandonment, having a perception on detachment, having a perception on cessation, having a perception on the non-delightfulness of the whole world, having a perception on the non-pleasantness of the whole world, having a mindfulness of in and out breathing to liberate any arising troubling thought or an initial thought as well.
Typically, the practice of the 10 perceptions is to have a mindfulness with attention on the right perception of the Dharma, and it is considered as a kind of wholesome one in the Buddhist practice which can be applicable in various occasions, such as when performing a mindfulness meditation, the abandoning of 5 hindrance, and the liberated thinking in the mindfulness absorption. The 10th perception is exactly the mindfulness breathing, which is a baseline for the Buddhist practice. The concept of the 10 perceptions is to bring in an opposite perception and thinking to counterattack on strong desire and lust with an appropriate liberated perception as follows.
When countering with any arising troubling thought, we should learn on how to use a mindfulness with proper perception to maneuver the object of consciousness, no matter it is beauty or not beauty. That is, when encountering with something we like with desire and lust, then having a mindfulness with proper perception to view that it is not beauty to neutralize the arising emotional sensual pleasure feeling within the mind. On the other hand, when encountering with something we dislike with desire to destruct and lust, then having a mindfulness with proper perception to view that it is beauty to neutralize the arising emotional hatred feeling within the mind. It is a way to have a mindfulness with proper perception to counterattack and to subdue an arising emotional feeling in either way, no matter if we like it or dislike it. By doing so, the mind will be maintained in neutral to emotional feeling with mindfulness and wisdom.
In Buddhist meditation, the unwholesome hindrance is not forcibly subdued by meditation power, but instead it is abandoned by having mindfulness with attention on opposite reality of the right perception. And later in an insight observation, when experiencing the reality with wisdom, by then this wisdom is developed and then it will use to subdue all the arising unwholesome ones with wisdom. In the 4 mindfulness foundations, we will learn the truths of the appearing to be a beauty by performing an unattractiveness of the body and the 9 charnel ground contemplations to gain wisdom of the reality of the sensual pleasure in beauty body, and later using this wisdom to counterattack the arising sensual pleasure within the mind processing.